I will just say one thing. Now, you helped me with the unboxing last week. You watched me unboxing. Was it last week or the week before? I knitted something with some of that yarn. So if you do not have access to the kit, that is something that you might choose. It is the Noro Malvinas. I really love knitting with this yarn. It's the perfect yarn for this. And you can pick whichever colour you like. But look at that. It's 100 grams. It's 150 grams. So you can probably make 3 pairs with this, maybe. You never know. You could well get 3 pairs out of that. Weigh them. This is a tip. Weigh them when you finish knitting the first pair, and you'll know how many left you can get out of the rest of the yarn. So, it's definitely something to think about too. Which yarn could you use? And this is Noro yarn. It is Malvinas. It's 4.5 to 5mm needle yarn, which is going to be fine for the knit along knits. Knit along knits, you don't have to be exactly on tension. They're going to fit a hand. It's not going to be sculpted to fit a waist or be perfectly beautiful on a wedding day around the shoulders. Nothing like that. What we're looking at is a pair of mitts to keep you warm. And the fact that this is Aran yarn to knit with 4.5 to 5mm needles, I'm happy. And the yarn doesn't look that different to this. I'm going to be very, very happy with this, I'm sure. So let's do the actual exciting part of finding the first piece of yarn to knit with. And this is the exciting thing. This has got 150 grams of yarn in it. So how's that going to be? There we go. I'm going to find the yarn. This is actually really well made, this ball of yarn. Look at that. That's brilliant. This is like a cake. You can see it's like you get cakes of cotton yarn. It looks like the layers that you get, the spiral layer that you get in cakes of cotton yarn. So I'm going to do this here. Just take out enough and start knitting, and I will tell you how it feels. There we are. Oh, it's soft. This yarn is soft. And I've got a thick bit to start with. And this is what's lovely about this yarn. It's thin and thick and thin and thick. It's a yarn that I'd actually like to see in chunky, because one of my blanket patterns uses yarn like this, and I've never been able to find anything that really suits it. That's a whole colour. I like knitting with plainish colours, so that the pattern can stand out a lot of the time. I like seeing the knitted stitches. And if you are knitting something with a yarn that is going to stand out by itself, then the knitting stitches aren't as important. And I mean, that's not a problem. A lot of patterns work with that, but I'm just happen to be a knitter who really likes seeing the stitches. I think the texture is so important when it comes to knitting, when it comes to fabric in this respect. Why not see it? Why not find it? And why not use yarn that helps you see that? Yeah. Okay. I'm really liking this, and I'm only just casting on. I don't even know how many stitches I've done. I'm going to 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 34. I'm going to make the smaller mitts so they will be like these. There we go. Like that. But pink. And you see what I did there? I cast on too many stitches, and it doesn't matter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 15, 20, 25. Is that one stitch? Yes, it is. Ooh. Let me count that again. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. I've got 34 now. Let me double check. 1, 2, 3. That is a whole stitch. I've got to remember that when I come back to it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. Now I've got 32. Now this is interesting. So if you're a beginner knitter and you're looking at yarn like this, maybe it's not such a good idea. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. So what I did was count some of these stitches twice because the yarn kind of splits because of the way that it's made. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on with this yarn. I had no idea. I will add 2 more stitches, and then I'm convinced that I got 34. There we are. And I can start to do the ribbing. And if I get to the end and I'm at the right place in the pattern, then I know I have the right number of stitches. I will knit to the end of this row. So this is the interesting thing. When you are choosing yarn, think about how textured it is, how distracting maybe the perhaps bubbles are, or tweedy bits are, or even the colour is, so that when you're knitting you might make a mistake, because that can definitely happen. And I had to keep checking. I had to keep counting the stitches there just to see whether I was right or not, and to double check which stitches were stitches and which were part of a previous stitch. There you go. That's the one that was doubled, but it's come out of a single line there. But it is the same stitch. Further down, it's the same stitch. It's definitely the same stitch. It's just a thick bit of yarn. And this is also going to be easy to puncture, to go into the stitch and split it with a needle. For example, yeah, down here, you might actually kind of go into it like that instead of the whole stitch, and then there'll be a bit of texture hanging from your fabric. So think about that when you're choosing yarn. Is the texture confusing? Is it going to distract you? And is the colour confusing? And is it going to distract you? How even is the actual weave, the spin rather, of the yarn? That doesn't look too difficult, too distracting there. But if you look on the outside, you can see more thick bits definitely are there. And like we just saw at the beginning, there was thick bits. Thing is, it evens out. And this is why they can say which needles to use, because it evens out over the whole ball. So maybe the tiniest few stitches that are a little bit thicker will be evened out with those that are a little bit thinner. And then there's the medium stitches in between. So it doesn't matter over a whole piece. But yeah, if you are not confident with your knitting yet and you're not quite sure about stitches, then think about this. Definitely buy it if you want to and put it on the shelf and use it in 6 months' time. And don't think that you're going to have any problem with it, but also equally don't say, if I have a problem with it, I'm a failure. Because like I just did there, I had to count the stitches more than once. I always count the stitches more than once. That's just who I am. And I would suggest that you count the stitches, especially when you're casting on more than once. It's just good practice, because then you're less likely to start the first row and not make a mistake and realise that it's because you don't have the right number of stitches. So definitely, if you want to get this and maybe knit with it in 6 months' time, when you're used to the pattern, when you've knitted it with a few other yarns that are smoother and finer and not as distracting for the eye and indeed for the needle to puncture, then have a good go with it and enjoy it. And like I say, don't think yourself a failure as you go through it. This is a beautiful yarn. I'm going to knit with it. I'm going to love knitting with it. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to love the mittens that I come up with at the end. And wow, these needles are brilliant. Can I tell you about these needles? One of the best things about these needles, and I've got two best things about these needles. The tip, where it goes from, this is my millimeter thickness that I'm supposed to be, because that's what it says on the tip at the other end, to the point is really short. That is a brilliant thing, because I know I'm not the only one who's come across things that I've knitted and things that other people have knitted that are too tight because they're knitting too close to the tip. This is such a short tip, and it's very much like, I'm pretty sure this is the shortest tip on a 5mm needle that I've ever come across. It's even shorter than my brilliant bamboo needles that I absolutely love. That, just like 3mm shorter. I absolutely love that, because it's made for knitters. It's made to prevent mistakes and prevent things happening that you don't want to happen. The other thing I love about these needles is that the size is written on the end rather than where you're knitting. And if it's written where you're knitting, it can rub off. And give it a few years of knitting, you don't know what size it is, and you need to find that perfect gadget that tells you what size it is. And even then, you do wonder sometimes, is that right or isn't it? Because those needle sizes, they can not be made quite right, and I get to a point where I think, isn't it? I'm not sure. So yeah, I love these needles. I'm so happy. Thank you, Knitting Fever, because Knitting Fever gave me the needles as well as this. These are Lykke needles, Lykke. So there we go. So there you are. You just had me ramble about knitting, and we've talked about the yarn and we've talked about the needles. So definitely go and have a look. Of course, the link is in the description to join the knit along. I will see you soon. Bye for now. Happy knitting.